Today, we're going to talk about a single day, just 24 hours that literally decided the fate of an entire continent. This is the story of the Normandy Landings, an operation so big, so bold, that the outcome of World War II really hinged on what happened next. To really get what was at stake, you have to picture it. The year is 1944. The world had been torn apart by war for 5 long, brutal years. Europe was basically suffocating, and everyone was just waiting, holding their breath, to see what would happen. And the situation on the ground? It was grim. I mean, from Norway all the way down to Greece, Nazi Germany's grip on the continent was incredibly tight. This map really shows you the stark reality of it, a continent almost completely swallowed by the Third Reich. So let's just take a moment to set the stage and really look at the state of the war in Europe at this absolute critical moment. Okay, so with pretty much all of Western Europe under occupation, the Allies, we're talking mainly the US, Britain, and Canada, were up against a massive problem. They knew they couldn't win the war just from the air or by relying on the Soviets on the Eastern Front. No, they had to get boots on the ground in France. And to do that, they were cooking up a plan so huge, so ambitious, it was almost unbelievable. I mean, think about the question facing the Allied commanders. How in the world do you break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall, this massive coastal defense system, and actually carve out a foothold in what they called Fortress Europe? Well, the answer was going to be the biggest amphibious invasion in the history of the world. And that brings us to the operation itself, a plan so incredibly complex and just so audacious that, honestly, it stands as one of the greatest military operations in all of history. Now, the official code name was Operation Overlord, but you and I know it as the Normandy Landings, or simply D-Day. The goal was crystal clear: land a massive army on the beaches of Normandy, smash through the German defenses, and open up a brand new front in the west to start squeezing the German war machine. So, in the dark, early hours of June 6th, it was go time. This massive armada, almost 7,000 ships, started moving across the English Channel. It was like a floating city made of steel. And above them, the sky was just filled with thousands of planes. It was an invasion force on a scale the world had never even imagined. And on those ships and planes, 156,000 soldiers. Just think about that number. A huge coalition of young men from the US, from Britain, Canada, and other nations, all coming together for one incredibly dangerous mission. The whole invasion was aimed at a 50-mile stretch of the French coast, and it was divided into 5 sectors. Each one got a code name. The Americans were hitting Utah and Omaha. The British were assigned to Gold and Sword, and the Canadians were headed for Juno. The success of this entire thing depended on taking all 5 of these beaches. You know, a plan on paper is one thing, but executing it while people are shooting at you, that's something else entirely. So now let's turn to the brutal, chaotic fighting that erupted the second those boots hit the sand. So at Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword, the fighting was tough, no question. But things went more or less according to plan. But one beach was a different story. It was a nightmare where the plan fell apart almost right away. Omaha. To this day, the name itself just means pure carnage. This is where the American forces ran into the absolute worst of the German defenses. The men landing at Omaha were met by a storm, a literal wall of machine gun and artillery fire. What the Allied intelligence had somehow missed was that one of Germany's most battle-hardened infantry divisions was dug in right there. So instead of weak resistance, the Americans were running straight into a buzzsaw. And this really says it all. The doors on the landing crafts would drop, and the men inside would be cut down immediately. The first wave suffered unbelievable casualties. So many guys fell in the water without ever taking a single step on the beach. But here's the thing. Despite the chaos, the bloodshed, the insane losses, they didn't turn back. In small groups, guys just started rallying together. They started pushing forward, blowing holes in the barbed wire, and began the slow, terrible climb up the cliffs. It took hours of just unimaginable bravery and sacrifice. But by the end of that day, they had done it. They had clawed their way off that beach and grabbed a tiny, fragile, but absolutely vital foothold in France. And securing those beaches, especially winning the brutal fight at Omaha, was the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Which brings us to our final section, the war's turning point. D-Day wasn't just another battle. It was the move that completely changed the game in Europe. The Allies finally had their Western Front. And you can see the domino effect right here. That foothold they won in June allowed millions more Allied troops and tons of supplies to pour into France. Just 2 months later in August, Paris was liberated. And from there, it was a straight, relentless push towards Germany itself, which finally ended with their defeat in May of 1945. And there's really no debate about it among historians. The Normandy Landings, that was the moment. It was the operation that sealed the fate of Nazi Germany and opened the door to the liberation of all of Europe. You know, what happened on June 6, 1944, is just this incredible proof of how planning, courage, and immense sacrifice, all focused into one 24-hour window, can completely pivot the arc of human history. It really leaves you with a pretty big question to think about.